HOARD by Luna Carmoon, which is one of the most popular films at the festival in terms of like it's a debut, and there was a massive queue to go and see it, even amongst the press. It's funded by the BBC Films and by the BFI. This director has made a series of shorts, including Shag Bands, most recently, which came out in 2020. It is a film that starts with the childhood of its protagonist living with her mother, a single mother who's a compulsive hoarder in a very, very in a kind of cheerful but completely decaying and dilapidated domestic environment. She then ends up in foster care. We jump ahead to the present day where she has a kind of After Sun style. No, that's I say After Sun style romance. After Sun is about a father and daughter. Yeah. But there's this kind of Paul Mescal style guy who she has this kind of, he's got a girlfriend, but they have this like dirty, mucky, play fighting romance that is implied. It's implied that he's kind of basically not happy with his girlfriend, and he really wants to be like she taps into a side of him that excites her more. It's drab, it's manipulative, it's heavy-handed. What do you expect? It's a British film funded by the BFI. It uses music in a kind of like a very like annoying way. That it ends on what's it called? Everything But the Girl. A step out the play. Anyway, yes, I think someone on Twitter who we were having a chat with on the Return to Form Twitter account made a good point about this, that it one doesn't want to be too mean, because basically this seems like a very personal work for everyone involved, but like it gets completely lost in translation. Unfortunately, so much of British film is basically people having a profound experience in their life, trying to communicate this experience
and failing
in a way that feels authentic to them, but actually doesn't work as a film, because they haven't themselves mastered the tools of film in a way whereby they can make deliberate decisions.
It's I think this was Shane Meadows' thing with Dead Man's Shoes.
I think also true of After Sun, although I think After Sun is a better film than this. This film relies really heavily on extremely manipulative moments of signaling, a little bit like the Mother of Mine short that we talked about, where various objects were identified and as being like ciphers for grief.
Hairbrush.
There's a moment where in the childhood sequence, the mother daubs her daughter with chalk as a way of showing how she loves her, and then we later see a man she's interested in dusting a pool cue at a pub when she's in her sort of teenage years.
It's hardly Proust, is it?
No, exactly.
Snooker cue.
Yeah, and what happens that's so disgusting about like what's so irritating is that then all this ambient sound goes down and you get this
not this Foley
thing,
fucking,
and then the Foley gets really loud and everything's slow motion, and you're being told extremely heavy-handed, this is reminding of her something, this is important. It doesn't have the confidence in the audience to just like see stuff that's in the mise en scène and like respond to it.
But
in
I mean,
their
it
own
sounds
time
like across the board, this is what we're identifying in the this like absence of confidence in the intelligence of your audience. I mean, there is a moment in the Jude film, for instance, when defending her kind of Bobita character, Angela is like, look, I just I trust that people are intelligent enough to understand what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it is a film which throughout sustains itself, and nobody left, and I was seeing it in NFT1 packed out, and it's just this condescension, and especially these Foley maneuvers every time are just straightforwardly.
But we've had this since like the 90s. I mean, this technique. I guess like.
But it's becoming ever more. It
used to be the preserve of genre cinema. It used to be like Sexy Beast or like almost
or the Bourne films
Guy Ritchie or something. You hyper intensified,
overproduced in that sense.
But the fact that they're being deployed in these films that are supposed to be quite humane, like intimate dramas.
Remember
Lucas Dont did it.
Remember like Emily Atef with these.
Emily Atef did it. Not so strongly in the Emily Atef.
No, but particularly with these sex scenes where you could really hear the zip being pulled down the dress. It was like this really, it was really, it was this really kind of, and I think there was a sense where the Foley has become so overdeveloped as a
it's
kind
where
of device.
content becomes form, because it's like it's so obsessed. It's like they think, these filmmakers think that this is their like flourish, but really they're just like taking the script and like shoving it in your face in the most. And there are loads of bits of dialogue where people say these things like, you know, I realize grief never stops. It actually just comes back in different forms. Or like a character will say to another character, "Why don't you love me enough? Why don't you love me like I love you?" Like everything is like, you know,
people don't really talk like that.
It's the BFI, like they lecture everyone about like show don't tell, but the people their flagship film is just full of these very, very clunky
signaling.
You know,
I think it shows a lack of comfort and with the inherently filmy nature of film, you know, with the tools of your disposal as a filmmaker, and it relies on, it almost assumes like film has to be a series of kind of emotional crescendos. You know, there has to be these kind of key points. I mean, one of the tent poles, you know, it's all building towards a point, and then there's a kind of collapse, and then you build to another point again, and it's this kind of stochastic wave, and that's how British film or a lot of very manipulative art house film is done. Whereas, you know, one of the most interesting films we watched recently was probably The Mother and the Whore,
by Jean Eustache,
which never does that, because it's like it's all peak. You know, it's all kind of, and it's got
faces as well.
Faces. It's got a looseness about it. It's got a kind of tumbling. The film is falling down a flight of stairs.
Maybe what you want to visualize a kind of sine wave of the film. You want to see it like all peak, right? Like
all peak.
Wait, what do you mean by that? Do you mean in terms of quality or in terms of like energy? Because I think a good film doesn't always keep up the same energy.
You can build, but I think the British film.
I'm also fine with a film that doesn't build, that just stays.
Yeah, but like how are we deploying this metaphor? I'm a little bit.
I'm not sure.
All right. So what I'm thinking,
we don't know enough about sine waves, I think.
But when it comes to like these Foley techniques, you know, they have a history and they have been deployed intelligently. Like Come and See, for you know, Klimov brings this into.
He uses deafness and the
but
revocation of sounds.
There it's being done to enhance the story of like such kind of gut-wrenching severity, which is, and he's using every other cinematic tool at his disposal. It's not being used as a sort of cheat code to bypass intelligently doing everything else, which is what we are.
The other thing I must say about HOARD is, and I think this relates to my point about, I guess generally my point about identity politics filming. I mean, I don't think this was really an IDPOL film, but I mean, and it was quite interesting hearing Luna Carmoon at the red carpet saying that her main influences were like Deep End and, you know, a lot of these sort of 70s folk horror films, and for her these accusations of the film being histrionic and hysterical would probably be praised to her, because she likes the kind of Ennis Men style, like, you know, and sort of 70s nostalgia of like just heightening things because it's a height,
you know, in the interesting way of like a giallo or something, you know, where you've got a kind of beauty through excess, you know.
I think maybe the giallo register just doesn't work for British filmmakers. I think there's something weird with British people trying to do giallo style, like,
because we have a history. We're repressed, whereas the Italians are inherently unrepressed. You know,
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting if it was so easily explained by cultural.
It must be. I think it's absolutely a nativist reading of this.
But it does. Yeah,
if in doubt, reach for it.
It does fall flat.
Stereotypes.
I think. But just to continue my thread here, the feeling that this was my story, and I've got to tell my story, which is all these shorts that we complained about in the previous report, funded by the BFI, follow this logic of like, hang out with these people. These people like this. Their story is valid to them, and that therefore it will be valid to you. And it misses the kind of like the great leap that like James Baldwin always understood, which is that like we do have a shared humanity, and therefore no matter how horribly divided we are by politics, there is some way in which an intimate like experience can be communicated to everyone somehow, and that is radical. The like art in itself actually has this radical potential to be like objectively good, even though we will constantly disagree.
British film tends to operate in the register of that meme, which is, damn bitch, you really live like this.
Yeah. Like the BFI logic is like this is my story, and if you don't like you have to like it because it's my story, because it's my trauma, and I'm going to and that's why they end up spelling things out, and that's why also they spent hours and hours in these very, I mean, HOARD has loads of sequences that are presumably improvised scenes of schoolgirls kind of gossiping and joking with each other, and I'm rather concerned.
Interesting.
I'm rather concerned about the upcoming screening of How to Have Sex, which seems to be even more. I assume just by the title and the subject matter that it will be more scenes, improvised scenes of teenage girls laughing and frolicking and bantering and talking about boys. And yeah,
Bechdel test failed.
True. And it does.
That could be interesting.
It raises a laugh from the audience. After initially, and it rely. And I don't think foreign filmmakers, foreign audiences will find it particularly interesting because usually the kind of register is like very British.
I think
Brit comedy.
where that doesn't work is if the rest of the film is in this very mannerist, exaggerated sort of
which it is, yeah,
register. Then these scenes of ordinary life, these snippets, these ethnographic snippets, don't work so well.
Yeah,
a film. We'll talk about Europe in a minute. Maybe it's a good segue, which kind of combines the ethnographic and the dramatic in a really interesting way, in a very sort of interwoven way. Whereas these things, that's not going to hit for me.
No, I think HOARD is a bit. I didn't see Scrapper, but the press around Scrapper was, which was another British film recently. Charlotte Reagan, I believe, was director, and she was saying that British films are too drab and social realist. In my film, I paint the council estate rainbow colours, in order to counteract this tendency, which was extremely
just don't shoot in a council estate.
Extremely tedious.
You can leave.
You need to get out of the hood.
Other locations do exist.
It was a sort of extremely facile antidote to Loachism. This felt a bit similar in that it was about a working class family, but it was an attempt to show like working class life as having this kind of like joie de vivre and charm and color, but it still relied like fundamentally the master's tools. It was still like the tool, the way it was basically like, this is my experience, and I'm not going to attempt to make it like I'm not going to attempt to tell this story any better than I need to, because this was my experience.
And desperate to humanize
exactly
these films. Yeah, I think that's the thing that's with the short films you saw as well. There was always a kind of humanizing. I'm not against humanizing. But when it's
it
done
works,
purely
right?
it's a fear of ambiguity and ambivalence.
True, and everyone who's a goodie needs to be sympathetic, and everyone who's a baddie, or even the kind of the complexity that's built around characters like the mother seem the sort of chaotic mother. It is built around like an assumption of your sympathy because of her position in society. It was nothing really worked in this film, but it was quite well cast. The vernacular cinematically was this kind of like slightly moving about, kind of over the shoulder vibe. I think it was shot on film. The color was quite deep and interesting. Production design was pretty good. It spent a lot of time in rooms. I guess this is because the BFI don't really have much money, but it was like annoyingly a period piece about the late 90s, early noughts, a bit like After Sun. So again, you have millennial filmmakers who are now just making films about their child, and they can't even be bothered to set them in a time different. So everything has it has to be like Blair.
The production managers on eBay going, I need to find 10 Blackberries.
Exactly. Blackberries and Woolworths bags and everything. It was really super annoying in that respect. It didn't dare to be contemporary. It didn't dare to step outside of the absolute specificity of the story it was trying to tell. And the story it was trying to tell was told in a far too overly direct way, and that made it kind of an alienating experience. And
don't be obvious.
Yeah,
be obvious. So like Radu Jude is someone who's obvious in a way, because she's presenting what the world to us as it is, but in the process fractures and fragments it, makes it very defamiliarizes it. Whereas this is, I don't like having my hand held for a film.
Yes, HOARD is like that, and it's basically
this.
It's a sentimental film that kind of that is aimed at like this very narrow group of programmers and critics, to whom this particular 70s nostalgist, 90s nostalgia,
when will it end?
It's
the long 1970s.
It's rooted in an idea of the working class, the noble working class of the Thatcher, the post that the sort of this era. I think the childhood bit is set during Thatcher, using this kind of 70s folk horror aesthetic.
Can I read something to you that I came across in the
Is this HOARD related?
Yes. So this is a snipping from the Guardian this weekend.
Oh, I know what you're about to read. Yeah.
Yes, when it comes to the way we dress, we're often cliches. We wear turned-up denim, Fred Perry, Universal Works, Converse, and Carhartt. Our clothes say unobtrusive and timeless. We fear new trends in case they make us look foolish. We worship the comedian Stuart Lee. We loathe Jacob Rees-Mogg. We're leftish centrists. We want no trouble.
He has a favourite Mahler symphony. He sometimes goes to Cafe Oto.
yeah. We're scrupulously careful around the work of women and musicians and actors. You can laugh at us, but as middle-aged men go, we're okay.
This is what
Music Dad.
The BFI is the BFI is Six Music Dad all over, and this is why bad films like HOARD keep getting commissioned. Yeah. It's a real shame. You know, the old world
is dying, and the old world has just. I mean, Terence Davies
has just died.
Not even cold. So,
what's the meaning of that?
I think it's
I just mean the old world is dying.
Yeah.
Ken Loach is retired.
Ken Loach, thank God, has promised to make the Old Oak will be his last film. And Terence Davies, whose films I never liked, has died. But that, obviously
irrelevant.
It's sad for his family. But
shout out to his family.
British film is it's grasping for some kind of like some hope, like let's find a woman filmmaker who's like personal and radical, but it just falls so flat every time. I'm bored. I'm bored of.
Well, should we talk about films that are a bit more interesting?
Glad I didn't see them. All right.